The sky above Sereth burned orange and red. Smoke rose from cities that had stood for thousands of years. The Velari people ran through the streets, carrying their children, their elderly, and whatever they could hold in their thin silver arms. Elder Rael stood at the window of the great temple, watching his world die slowly. His large, dark eyes reflected the fires in the distance. Behind him, the council members argued in soft, frightened voices. They had been arguing for days now, and still there was no answer. The Krath Empire was coming. Everyone in the galaxy knew the Krath. They were conquerors. They moved from system to system, taking what they wanted and destroying what they did not need. In 3,000 years of galactic history, no one had ever stopped them. No one had ever even slowed them down. The Velari had tried diplomacy. They had offered resources, technology, even territory. The Krath had laughed at them. The Krath did not negotiate. They took. Now the Krath fleet was 30 cycles away, less than one of the human months. When they arrived, the Velari civilization would end. It was simple mathematics. The Velari had no real military. They had never needed one. They were a peaceful people, scientists and artists and philosophers. They had never fought a war in their entire history. Rael turned away from the window. The council fell silent. "We have contacted everyone," said one council member, a female named Sira. "The merchant guilds will not help. The collective says they cannot spare ships. The assembly has closed their borders." "They are afraid," Rael said quietly. "Everyone is afraid of the Krath." "Then we are alone." Rael closed his eyes. There was one option left, one possibility that no one wanted to discuss. It was desperate, it was probably foolish, but it was all they had. "There is one species we have not contacted," he said. The council members looked at each other with confusion. "The humans," Rael said. Silence filled the room, then slowly nervous laughter. "The humans?" Sira shook her head. "Elder, with respect, the humans are primitives. They only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 of their years ago. They have barely left their own solar system. What could they possibly do against the Krath?" "They are warriors," Rael said. "They are children playing with toys. They do not understand." Rael walked to the center of the room. His silver robes dragged across the ancient stone floor. "I have studied the humans," he said. "We all dismissed them when they first appeared on the galactic stage. They were loud and strange and violent, but I watched them. I read their history, and I became afraid. Afraid of humans. Their planet is a death world," Rael continued. "Their sun bombards them with radiation. Their weather creates storms that flatten cities. Their oceans are filled with predators. The ground beneath their feet shakes and opens without warning. And yet they survived. They did more than survive. They conquered their world. They spread across every part of it, from frozen ice to burning desert. Nothing could stop them." The council listened now. The laughter was gone. "They are violent, yes, but their violence has purpose. They fight to protect. They fight for those they love. They fight for ideas, for principles, for strangers they have never met." Rael paused. "In their history there are countless stories of humans risking everything to save others, not for money, not for power, simply because they believed it was right." "You think they would help us?" Sira asked. "Why would they? We have nothing to offer them that they could not eventually develop themselves." "Because we will ask," Rael said, "and sometimes for humans that is enough." The council voted. It was not unanimous, but it was enough. They would send the message. Far across the galaxy, on a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star, a young woman named Hana sat at her desk in the UNSC headquarters in Seoul. It was late at night, and most of her colleagues had gone home. But Hana liked the quiet hours. It was easier to focus on the signals from deep space when the building was empty. She worked as a translator and communications specialist. Her job was to monitor transmissions from the edges of explored space, looking for anything unusual. Most nights, She found nothing but static and old echoes from distant stars. Tonight was different. The signal came in strong and clear carrying patterns that her computer immediately flagged as artificial, intelligent, deliberate. Hana sat up straight in her chair. Her heart began to beat faster. She ran the signal through the translation algorithms. The Velari language was in the database. They were a known species, though humanity had never made direct contact with them. They were considered quiet, peaceful, uninteresting to the major powers of the galaxy. The translation appeared on her screen, line by line. Hana read it once, then she read it again, then she picked up her phone and called her supervisor. "Sir," she said, her voice shaking slightly, "you need to come in right now." Within 2 hours, the UNSC headquarters was full of people. Admirals and generals, scientists and diplomats, all staring at the same message on the main display screen. To the humans of Earth, we are the Velari, we are dying. The Krath Empire will reach our world in 30 cycles. We have watched you from afar. We know you are warriors, we beg you, help us. We will give you anything, technology, resources, knowledge of the stars, please, we have nowhere else to turn. The room was silent. Admiral Park Jisoo, commander of the UNSC fleet, stood at the front of the room. He was an old man with gray hair and sharp eyes. He had seen many things in his long career, but he had never seen anything like this. "Do we have confirmation that this is genuine?" he asked. "Yes, sir," Hana replied. "The signal includes star charts, coordinates, and detailed intelligence on Krath military strength. The data is consistent with everything we know about that region of space." "The Krath," Admiral Park said slowly. He knew the name. Everyone in the UNSC knew the name. The Krath were monsters. They had destroyed civilizations that were ancient when humanity was still living in caves. "Sir," one of the generals spoke up, "this is not our fight. We have no treaties with the Velari. We have no obligations. The Krath have never threatened Earth. If we involve ourselves in this conflict, we could bring destruction to our own world." "Agreed," said another voice. "We should send a polite refusal and focus on our own defenses." The room buzzed with agreement. It was the logical choice, the safe choice. But Hana watched Admiral Park's face. She saw something there that the others missed, a tightening of his jaw, a hardness in his eyes. "They came to us," Admiral Park said quietly. The room fell silent again. "Out of every species in this galaxy, every civilization, every power, they came to us. They called us warriors. They said we were their last hope." He looked around the room. "What kind of warriors abandon those who ask for help?" "Sir, the risk." "I know the risk." Admiral Park turned to face the display screen where the Velari message still glowed. "I also know who we are. We are humans, and humans do not let bullies win." He turned back to the room. "Call an emergency session of the full council. We vote in 6 hours. And someone get me Captain Tiho. If we are going to war, I want the best ship captain we have." Hana felt something strange in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it. Hope. Across the galaxy, Elder Rael sat alone in the great temple, waiting. He did not know if the humans had received his message. He did not know if they would respond. He only knew that he had done everything he could. Outside, the sky continued to burn. But somewhere in the darkness between stars, a signal was traveling toward a small blue planet. And on that planet, a species that had never known the galaxy was about to learn what kind of people they truly were. The humans were coming, they just did not know it yet. The United Nations Space Command Council chamber was the largest room Hana had ever seen. It sat deep beneath the mountains of Switzerland, built to survive anything from nuclear war to asteroid impacts. Today, it was filled with the most powerful people on Earth. Representatives from every nation sat in curved rows facing a central platform. Flags from 200 countries hung from the ceiling. The air was thick with tension and the quiet murmur of 100 different languages. Hana stood near the back, watching. She had been asked to attend as the person who first received the Velari message. She felt very small in this room full of presidents and prime ministers and generals. Admiral Park Jisoo stood on the central platform, the Velari message displayed on massive screens behind him. He had been speaking for almost an hour, explaining everything they knew about the situation. Now came the hard part. "The question before us is simple," Admiral Park said. "Do we help, or do we stay home?" The room erupted in argument. The American representative spoke first. "This is madness. We have no idea what we would be getting into. The Krath have conquered species that were building starships when we were still figuring out fire. What chance do we have?" "Exactly," agreed the European representative. "Our military is designed for defending Earth, not fighting wars on the other side of the galaxy. We do not have the ships. We do not have the experience. We would be sending our people to die." "And if we do nothing?" asked the Korean representative, a woman named Bora. "If we hide here on Earth while an entire civilization is destroyed, what does that say about us?" "It says we are smart," someone replied. "It says we survive." The arguments went back and forth. Hana listened to all of them. Both sides made good points. The logical choice was to stay out of it. The safe choice was to protect Earth first. But something in her heart refused to accept that. The door at the back of the chamber opened. A man walked in, tall and calm, wearing the uniform of a UNSC captain. His name was Tiho, and he commanded the carrier Horizon, the most advanced ship in the human fleet. Admiral Park nodded to him. "Captain Tiho, thank you for coming. The Council has questions about our military capabilities." Tiho walked to the platform. He moved like someone who had spent his entire life in dangerous situations and had learned never to rush. "Ask your questions," he said. The American representative leaned forward. "Captain, do we have any realistic chance of defeating the Krath in open combat?" Tiho was quiet for a moment, then he smiled slightly. "Honestly, I do not know. No one has ever beaten the Krath. They have bigger ships, more experience, and better weapons." He paused. "But I have read about their tactics. I have studied how they fight, and I think they have a weakness." "What weakness?" "They have never lost. They do not know how to handle an enemy that does not give up. They are used to species that surrender when the situation becomes hopeless." Tiho looked around the room. "Humans do not surrender. We get angry. We get creative. We fight harder when things look bad. The Krath have never faced that before." "That is not exactly reassuring," the American representative said. "No," Tiho agreed, "but it is honest. I cannot promise victory. I can only promise that if we go, we will give them the hardest fight of their lives." The room fell silent. Representative Bora stood up. "I would like to hear from the woman who received the message. Hana, is that correct?" Hana felt her face grow warm as every eye in the room turned to her. She had not expected to speak. "Yes," she managed to say. "You translated the message. You read their words. What did you feel?" Hana thought about the question. She remembered sitting alone in that quiet room, watching the words appear on her screen. She remembered the desperation in those simple sentences, the fear, the hope. "I felt ashamed," she said. The room murmured in surprise. "Ashamed?" Bora asked. "They called us warriors. They said we were their last hope. But the first thing we did was look for reasons not to help. We talked about risks and costs and strategies." Hana took a breath. "They are dying. Their children are dying. And they asked us, strangers from across the galaxy, to save them. That is how desperate they are. And our response is to calculate whether it is worth our time." She looked at the faces around her. Presidents, generals, the most powerful people on Earth. "My grandmother used to tell me stories about the old times, about how Koreans helped each other after the war, strangers sharing food, Neighbors protecting neighbors. She said that was what made us human, not our technology or our intelligence, our willingness to help people who needed it. Hana pointed at the screen, where the Velari message still glowed. Someone needs help. They came to us. If we turn away now, then maybe we do not deserve to call ourselves human. She sat down, her heart pounding. The room was completely silent. Then slowly Captain Tiho began to clap. One person joined him, then another. Within seconds, half the room was applauding. Admiral Park raised his hand for silence. I think we have heard enough debate. It is time to vote. All in favor of sending military aid to the Velari people, please indicate now. Hands rose throughout the chamber. Hana counted them, hardly daring to breathe. It was not unanimous. Nothing ever was, but it was overwhelming. Admiral Park nodded. The motion passes. Humanity will answer. The next 24 hours were chaos. Every shipyard on Earth and Luna began working around the clock. Soldiers received deployment orders. Engineers scrambled to prepare ships for the longest journey in human history. Yuna was one of those engineers. She worked in the main dock at New Sol Station, where the Horizon and its sister ships were being fitted for war. She had not slept in 2 days. Her team was trying to integrate the Velari star charts into human navigation systems, and nothing was working the way it should. The coordinate systems are completely different, she muttered, staring at her display. They measure distance in ways that do not match anything we use. Her assistant, a young man named Junho, handed her another cup of coffee. Can we convert it? We can try, but we might end up flying into a star. That would be bad. Yes, Junho, that would be bad. Despite everything, Yuna laughed. She had been an engineer for 15 years, and this was the hardest problem she had ever faced. But she loved hard problems. They were the only ones worth solving. By morning, she had cracked it. The solution was ugly and imperfect, but it worked. Human ships could now navigate to Velari space. She reported to Captain Tiho immediately. How confident are you? He asked. 70%. That is not very confident. Yuna shrugged. It is the best I can do with the time we have, but I have a backup plan if the main navigation fails. What is the backup plan? I will figure it out when we get there. Tiho stared at her for a moment, then he smiled. I like you, Engineer Yuna. Welcome to the Horizon. As the fleet prepared to launch, one final message was sent to the Velari. Hana wrote it herself, translating it carefully into their language. Velari people, this is the United Nations Space Command. We received your message. We are coming. Hold the line. Help is on the way. The message traveled across the galaxy at the speed of light. It would reach Sarath days before the human fleet, but it would reach them. On Sarath, Elder Rael was sitting alone in the great temple when the message arrived. He read it once, then he read it again, then he fell to his knees and wept. They are coming, he whispered. The humans are coming. Word spread across the planet within hours. People who had given up hope began to believe again. Soldiers who had prepared to die began to prepare to fight. Children who had been told to hide looked up at the sky and wondered what their saviors would look like. No one had ever helped the Velari before. No one in the entire galaxy had ever risked their own safety for strangers. But the humans were different. The humans were coming. In orbit around Earth, the fleet assembled. 47 carriers, 200 frigates, 15,000 soldiers. It was everything humanity had. Captain Tiho stood on the bridge of the Horizon, looking at the blue planet below. He had been born on that world. He had spent his whole life protecting it. Now he was leaving it behind, flying toward a war that was not his, to save people he had never met. He did not feel afraid. He felt proud. All ships, he said into the fleet communication channel, this is Captain Tiho of the Horizon. We are about to do something no human has ever done. We are going to cross the galaxy. We are going to face an enemy that has never been beaten. And we are going to show them what humans are made of." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I will not lie to you. This will be dangerous. Some of us may not come home, but we are not doing this for glory or for conquest. We are doing this because someone asked for help, and that is what humans do. We help." He took a breath. "All ships engage engines. Set course for Sarath. Let us go save some lives." The fleet moved as one, accelerating toward the edge of the solar system. Behind them, Earth grew smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light among billions. Ahead of them waited the unknown, the Velari, the Krath, a war that would change everything. Humanity was going to war, and for the first time in galactic history, the bullies were about to meet someone who would not back down. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sarath system. 47 carriers and 200 support ships appeared from nothing, filling space with steel and fire. On the bridge of the horizon, Captain Tiho looked at the viewscreen. Sarath hung in the distance, a pale green world with white clouds and silver oceans. It was beautiful, in a quiet way that made him think of paintings he had seen in museums. "We made it," Yuna said from her engineering station. Her voice was tired but satisfied. "Navigation worked perfectly. Mostly. Mostly. We are about 2 million kilometers off course. But considering we traveled halfway across the galaxy, that is not bad." Tiho smiled. "I will take it. Hana, open a channel to the Velari." Hana's fingers moved across her console. "Channel open, Captain." "People of Sarath, this is Captain Tiho of the United Nations Space Command. We are here as promised, requesting permission to approach your world." There was a long pause. Then a voice came through, speaking in heavily accented but understandable English. "Human vessel, this is Sarath Command. We did not believe you would actually come. Permission granted. Please proceed to Orbital Station 7. Elder Rael wishes to meet you personally." Tiho felt something warm in his chest. "Tell Elder Rael we are honored. Horizon out." The fleet moved towards Sarath. As they approached, Tiho noticed the state of the orbital defenses. They were old and poorly maintained. Several stations showed signs of recent repairs, done quickly and badly. The Velari had tried to prepare, but they simply did not have the military infrastructure. It was worse than he had expected. Elder Rael met them at the docking bay of Orbital Station 7. He was tall, almost 2 meters, with silver skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. His eyes were large and dark, designed for the dim sun of his home system. He wore robes of deep blue that marked him as a leader. Behind him stood 2 others. A young female with curious eyes, introduced as Thea, a scientist, and a male with a harder expression, introduced as Nex, one of the few Velari warriors. Tiho extended his hand. "Elder Rael, it is an honor to meet you." Rael looked at the hand with confusion for a moment. Then understanding crossed his face, and he reached out to shake it. His grip was gentle, almost fragile. "Captain Tiho, the honor is ours. We did not know if you would come. Many in the galaxy said humans were too young, too weak, too far away." His voice cracked slightly. "But you came." "We received your message," Tiho said simply. "How could we not come?" Rael stared at him, as if he had said something impossible. Over the next few days, the humans and Velari worked to understand each other. It was not easy. They were very different species with very different ways of thinking. Thea was assigned to study the human visitors and help them adjust to Velari culture. What she learned shocked her. She started with basic biology and found things that seemed impossible. "You sleep only 6 hours per rotation," she asked Minyu, the human combat squadron commander. He was younger than Tiho, with quick eyes and a ready smile. "6 hours is normal," Minyu said, "sometimes less before a battle." "But how do you function?" Velari require 12 hours of rest to maintain health. Minyu shrugged. We drink coffee. What is coffee? He handed her a small cup of dark liquid. She took one sip and immediately felt her heart rate increase. This is poison, she said, staring at the cup. This is actual poison. Yes, Minyu agreed cheerfully. It is delicious poison. Thea documented everything. The humans consumed foods that would be lethal to Velari. They enjoyed temperatures that would cause heat stroke in her people. They exposed themselves to radiation from their own sun for fun, calling it getting a tan. But the strangest thing was how they approached danger. She watched Minyu's squadron run training exercises. Their small fighters dived and spun and nearly crashed into each other, moving at speeds that made her feel sick just watching. And through it all, they were laughing. Actually laughing. They enjoy this, she said to Nex, who stood beside her watching. They fly towards simulated death, and they enjoy it. Nex's expression was unreadable. I have been a warrior for 30 years. I have trained every day of my adult life. I have never once found joy in it. It is duty, necessity, but for them it is. Fun, Thea finished. Yes, fun. Minyu landed his fighter and walked over to them, removing his helmet. His face was flushed and happy. Good run today, he said. Few more days of practice and we will be ready for the real thing. Nex studied him carefully. You truly do not fear death. Minyu thought about the question for a moment. Of course I fear death. Everyone does, but fear and fun are not opposites for humans. We can feel both at the same time. Some of us even enjoy the fear. It makes us feel alive. That is insane, Nex said. Probably, Minyu agreed, but it works. Meanwhile, Dongsu, the human medic, had set up a clinic in one of the damaged cities on the surface. The Velari medical technology was advanced, but their doctors were overwhelmed by the number of injured civilians. Dongsu was different from the soldiers. He was quieter, gentler, with hands that moved with careful precision. He worked 18 hours a day, treating burns and broken bones and radiation sickness. One afternoon, a young Velari child approached him. The child's arm was bandaged, and her large, dark eyes were full of fear. Are you one of the human warriors? She asked. Dongsu smiled. I am a healer, actually, but yes, I came with the warriors. Will you really fight the Krath? Everyone says no one can beat the Krath. Dongsu knelt down to meet her eyes. His knees ached from hours of standing, but he ignored the pain. Let me tell you something about humans, he said. A long time ago on our world there were creatures much bigger and stronger than us. Huge animals with sharp teeth and claws. They should have killed us all. What happened? We refused to die. We were smaller and weaker, but we were stubborn. We worked together. We made tools and weapons, and eventually we became the dominant species on our planet. He put a gentle hand on her shoulder. The Krath are big and strong, but so were the things that tried to kill us, and we are still here. The child's mother had been listening. She stepped forward, tears in her eyes. Why? She asked. Why did you come? You do not know us, you owe us nothing. Why would you risk everything for strangers? Dongsu stood up. He looked at the mother, at the child, at the broken city around them. On Earth we have a saying, no one is a stranger when they need help. You needed help, we came. The mother began to cry. In 3,000 years of Velari history, no other species had ever offered help without demanding something in return. Back on the orbital station, Hana was working with Rail to coordinate defense plans. The Krath would arrive in just 12 days. Time was running out. Your ships are faster than we expected, Rail said, studying the human tactical displays. And your weapons, while primitive by galactic standards, are surprisingly effective. Our technology developed differently, Hana explained. We spent most of our history fighting each other. Our weapons were designed to kill humans. It turns out that makes them very good at killing other things too. Rael looked disturbed by this. You fought each other, your own species. Constantly, for thousands of years, wars over land, resources, religion, politics. Hana paused. We are not proud of it, but it made us very good at war. And now, do you still fight each other? Less than before, we found other things to fight, she smiled slightly, like empires that threaten innocent people. Rael was quiet for a long moment. When we first detected your species, the Galactic Council dismissed you. They said you were too violent, too chaotic, too primitive to ever be a real power. They were wrong. Were they? Violence without purpose is savagery, but violence in defense of others, violence in pursuit of justice, that is something else entirely. Rael met her eyes. The Council saw your capacity for destruction. They did not see your capacity for compassion. That was their mistake. On the last night before the Krath arrived, Captain Tiho stood on an observation deck looking out at the stars. The fleet floated nearby, 47 carriers ready for battle, 15,000 humans who had crossed half the galaxy to fight for strangers. Minyu joined him. Nervous, Tiho asked. A little, but mostly excited. Minyu grinned. This is what we trained for, right? All those years of drills and exercises. Finally, we get to do something that matters. We might not all come back. I know. Minyu's grin faded, but only slightly. But if I die tomorrow, I die protecting people who could not protect themselves. There are worse ways to go. Tiho nodded. He had served with many soldiers over the years, but humans were different. They did not fight because they were ordered to. They fought because they believed it was right. Below them, on the surface of Serath, millions of Velari looked up at the sky. They could see the human ships now, small points of light moving among the stars. For the first time in months, they felt hope. The Krath were coming, but so were the humans. And the humans did not know how to give up. Tomorrow, the galaxy would learn what that meant. The Krath fleet arrived at dawn. 200 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Each ship was massive, built for conquest, covered in weapons that had destroyed civilizations. At the center of the formation flew the flagship, a monster of metal and fire commanded by Warlord Vor himself. Vor stood on his command bridge looking at the display that showed Serath below. Another world to conquer, another species to crush. It was routine at this point, boring almost. Then his sensors detected something unexpected. What are those ships? He demanded. His tactical officer studied the data. Unknown design, Warlord. They do not match any species in our records. They are positioned between us and the planet. Vor laughed. It was a harsh sound like rocks grinding together. Someone thinks they can protect the Velari. How amusing. How many ships? 47 large vessels, approximately 200 smaller support craft. 47 against 200, Vor laughed again. This will not even be a battle. This will be a slaughter. Open a communication channel. Let us see who is foolish enough to challenge the Krath Empire. On the horizon, Captain Tiho watched the Krath fleet approach. His crew was silent, focused, ready. Beside him stood Hana, prepared to translate if necessary. The communication screen flickered to life. Warlord Vor appeared, tall and terrifying, with dark red skin and eyes like burning coals. His mouth was filled with sharp teeth, and his voice was deep and threatening. Unknown vessels. You are interfering with Krath military operations. Identify yourselves and surrender immediately. Resist, and you will be destroyed. Tiho remained calm. This is Captain Tiho of the United Nations Space Command, representing the planet Earth and the human species. The Velari people are under our protection. You will leave this system immediately. Vor blinked. For a moment he seemed confused. Humans, I have never heard of your species. You will remember us. Vor studied Tiho through the screen. Something in the human's calm confidence annoyed him. You have 47 ships against my 200. You have no chance of victory. Why would you throw away your lives for a species you do not even know? Because they asked for help. That is absurd. Maybe, Tiho leaned forward slightly. But we are here, and we are not leaving, so you have a choice, warlord. You can turn around and go home, or you can find out what happens when humans get angry. Vor's face twisted with rage. No one had ever spoken to him like this. No one had ever dared. You will die screaming, human. And after I destroy your pathetic fleet, I will find your homeworld and burn it to ash. Tiho smiled. It was not a friendly smile. You just made your second mistake. What was my first mistake? Coming here. The communication ended. On the Krath flagship, Vor roared orders. All ships attack formation, destroy them all, leave nothing alive. The Krath fleet moved forward, weapons charging, confident in their overwhelming numbers. They had done this hundreds of times before. They knew exactly how it would go. They were wrong. Minyu's fighter squadron launched from the horizon like bullets from a gun. 60 small ships, moving faster than the Krath sensors could track. All fighters, this is Squadron Commander Minyu. Follow my lead. Stay tight, stay fast, and remember your training. We are not here to survive. We are here to win. The squadron dove directly into the heart of the Krath formation. It was suicide. Every tactical manual in the galaxy said so. Small fighters should never engage capital ships directly. They should stay at range, harass the enemy, avoid direct confrontation. But humans had not read those manuals, and even if they had, they would have ignored them. Minyu's squadron weaved between the massive Krath warships, moving in patterns that seemed random but were actually carefully choreographed. The Krath gunners tried to track them, but humans flew like nothing they had ever seen. They did not follow predictable paths. They did not maintain safe distances. They flew like crazy people, like they did not care if they lived or died. Because in a way, they did not. I have lock on target 1, Minyu said calmly, firing. His missiles streaked toward a Krath destroyer. The ship's point defense systems tried to intercept them, but human missiles were strange. They did not fly in straight lines. They curved and jinked and changed direction at the last second. 3 of them got through, slamming into the destroyer's engine section. The ship exploded. Across the battle, the human carriers were moving into position. Unlike other species, human ships did not stay in formation and exchange fire at long range. They split up, attacking from multiple angles, keeping the Krath off balance. Yuna stood at her engineering station, pushing the Horizon systems harder than they had ever been pushed before. Captain, I can give you 30% more power to weapons if we reduce life support. Do it. You understand that means the ship will start getting cold. I understand, do it anyway. The temperature on the horizon began to drop. The crew pulled on jackets and kept fighting. Humans could survive conditions that would kill most species in the galaxy. They had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. A little cold was nothing. On the Krath flagship, Warlord Vor watched in disbelief as his ships began to fall. What is happening? He demanded. They are outnumbered 4-1, they should be dying. Their tactics make no sense, his tactical officer replied, fear in his voice. They do not fight like any species we have encountered. They take risks that should be fatal. They attack when they should retreat. He stopped, staring at his display. What is it? Warlord, they are boarding our ships. What? Multiple human teams have cut through the hulls of our vessels. They are fighting inside. Vor could not believe what he was hearing. No one boarded ships during combat. It was impossible. It was insane. But the humans were doing it anyway. On board a Krath cruiser, a human marine squad fought their way through the corridors. They were led by a woman named Sujin, a veteran of 20 years of military service. She had never fought aliens before today, but fighting was fighting. "Contact left," she called out, raising her weapon. A Krath soldier appeared around the corner, huge and terrifying. She shot it twice in the chest. It fell. "Move up. Engineering is 2 levels down." The Krath had never designed their ships with internal defense in mind. Why would they? No one had ever been crazy enough to board them. The human Marines moved through the ship like ghosts, destroying critical systems, sowing chaos. Within an hour, the cruiser was dead in space. Back in his fighter, Minyu was having the time of his life. His squadron had destroyed 5 enemy ships and damaged dozens more. Yes, they had lost pilots, good friends, but they were winning. Then his fighter took a hit. Warning lights flashed across his console. His left engine was gone. His weapons were offline. He was flying a dead ship. "Commander Minyu, you need to eject," his wingman called. "Your ship is finished." Minyu looked at his displays. Ahead of him, a Krath destroyer was turning to target the horizon. If it fired, it could cripple the carrier. He made a decision. "Negative, I have one last shot." He pushed his dying ship forward, aiming directly at the destroyer's bridge. The Krath tried to shoot him down, but he was too close, moving too fast. At the last possible second, he triggered the ejection system. His cockpit blew free just as his fighter slammed into the destroyer's command section. The explosion was beautiful, a flower of fire blooming in the darkness of space. Minyu floated in his ejection pod, watching the destroyer die. He was laughing. "Did you see that?" he said over the radio. "Did you see their faces?" The battle lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of chaos and fire and death. But when it was over, the Krath fleet was broken. Less than 50 of their ships remained. The rest were destroyed or disabled, floating wreckage among the stars. Warlord Vor's flagship was damaged, its weapons systems destroyed, its engines barely functional. Vor stared at his displays in shock. This was impossible. He had never lost a battle. The Krath Empire had never been defeated. "Warlord, we must retreat," his tactical officer said. "If we stay, we will all die." Vor wanted to argue. He wanted to fight to the death. But he looked at the human ship still moving, still fighting, still refusing to quit, and he felt something he had never felt before. "Fear. All ships," he said, his voice hollow. "Retreat, fall back to Krath space." The remaining Krath ships turned and fled. As they did, Vor sent one final transmission, broadcast on all frequencies so that every species in the sector could hear. "What are these creatures?" On the horizon, Captain Tiho watched the enemy retreat. His ship was damaged. His crew was exhausted. They had lost good people today. But they had won. Hana approached him, tears in her eyes. "Captain, I am receiving transmissions from Serath. The Velari are. They are celebrating. They are saying our names. They are calling us heroes." Tiho nodded slowly. He did not feel like a hero. He felt tired and sad for the people they had lost, but he also felt proud. "Tell them it was our honor," he said. Minyu's ejection pod was recovered an hour later. He was bruised and battered but alive. When they pulled him out, he was still smiling. "So," he said, "can we do that again tomorrow?" Yuna stared at him. "You are insane." "Probably, but we won, right?" "Yes, we won." Minyu's smile widened. "Then it was worth it." On the surface of Serath, millions of Velari watched the sky. They had seen the battle, seen the flashes of light as ships exploded, seen the human fleet stand against impossible odds and refuse to break. Elder Rael stood in the great temple, surrounded by his people. They were crying, laughing, holding each other. For the first time in months, they were not afraid. "They came," Rael said softly, his voice full of wonder. "They really came, and they won." Above them, the human ships began their slow descent toward the planet. They were battered and wounded, but victorious. The bullies had been beaten, and the galaxy would never be the same. The celebration on Serath lasted for 3 days. Every city on the planet joined in. People danced in streets that had been filled with fear just weeks before. Musicians played songs that had been forbidden during the dark times. Children ran through the crowds, laughing for the first time in months. And everywhere there were humans. The soldiers from Earth walked through the Velari cities like legends come to life. People reached out to touch them, to thank them, to offer them food and gifts. Some Velari simply stood and stared, unable to believe that these strange, loud, wonderful creatures had actually come to save them. Captain Tiho tried to avoid the celebrations. He had never been comfortable with praise. But Elder Rael found him on the observation deck of the orbital station, looking down at the planet below. "You should be with your people," Rael said gently. "They want to honor you." "The honor belongs to everyone who fought," Tiho replied. "I just gave orders. They did the real work." Rael stood beside him, following his gaze toward the green world below. "Captain, I must ask you something. Something that has been troubling me since the moment we sent that message to your people." "Ask." "Why did you come?" Tiho glanced at him. "We received your message. You asked for help." "Yes, but why did you answer? You did not know us. You had never met us. We are on the other side of the galaxy from your homeworld, and yet you came with your entire fleet risking everything." Rael's large dark eyes were full of confusion. In 3,000 years of Velari history, no one has ever done that. When the Krath threatened other species, those species either surrendered or died alone. No one came to help them. Why were you different? Tiho was quiet for a long moment. "On Earth, we have a concept called being a good neighbor. If your neighbor's house is on fire, you do not ask them to pay you before you help put it out. You just help. But we are not your neighbors. We are strangers." "Not anymore." Rael stared at him. Then slowly he began to understand. "You see no difference. Whether we live next door or across the galaxy, whether we are human or Velari, to you it is the same." "Someone was hurting people who could not fight back," Tiho said. "That made it our business. That is just how we think." "Your species is extraordinary." Tiho shook his head. "We are just humans. This is what we do." In one of the damaged cities below, Dongsu was still working. The battle was over, but there were still wounded to treat, still lives to save. He had not slept in 2 days, and his hands were starting to shake from exhaustion. Thea, the young Velari scientist, found him sitting on a bench outside his makeshift clinic, staring at nothing. "You need rest," she said. "There are more patients. There are other doctors. The Velari medical teams are back at full strength. You have done enough." Dongsu looked at her. His eyes were red and tired, but there was something else there, something that had been building since he first arrived on this world. "Do you know what I saw today?" he asked. A mother brought in her child. The child had been burned during one of the early attacks weeks ago. The burns had become infected. By all rights, that child should have died. "What happened?" "I treated him. Used some human antibiotics, some Velari regeneration technology. It worked. He is going to be fine." Dongsu smiled weakly. That mother looked at me like I had performed a miracle, but it was not a miracle. It was just medicine. It was just helping someone who needed help. Thea sat down beside him. "You are tired because you care too much." "Is that possible, caring too much?" "For most species, yes. We protect ourselves first. We conserve our energy for our own survival." She paused. "But you humans burn yourselves out helping others. It should be a weakness. Instead, it seems to be your greatest strength." Hana found them later, bringing news from the fleet. "The Galactic Council wants to speak with us," she said. "They have seen what happened here. They want to understand." Thea looked up sharply. "The Council? They ignored our pleas for months. They said they could not interfere with Krath affairs." "Well, now they want to talk." The Council meeting happened 3 days later, via long-range communication. Representatives from dozens of species appeared on the screens, their faces full of confusion and curiosity, and in some cases, fear. The council speaker, an elderly being from a species called the Torith, addressed Tiho directly. Captain Tiho of Earth, the council has observed the recent events at Sarath. We have questions. Ask. You crossed half the galaxy to fight a war that was not yours. You suffered significant losses. You risked the safety of your own world. Why? Tiho stood tall, facing the screens. Beside him were Hana, Minyu, Yuna, and Dongsu, the heroes of Sarath. Because the Velari asked for help. That is not a sufficient explanation. Every species in the galaxy has received pleas from the Krath's victims. No one has ever answered them. Then every species in the galaxy made a mistake. The council murmured. This was not the answer they had expected. You believe it is your responsibility to protect every weak species in the galaxy. Tiho thought about the question, then he shook his head. No, we do not believe it is our responsibility. We believe it is our choice. We chose to help because helping was the right thing to do, and we will continue to make that choice every time someone asks. The speaker leaned forward. And if the Krath return, if they come with an even larger fleet, then we will fight them again and again, as many times as necessary. Tiho paused. Let me be clear, Council. We are not asking for your permission. We are not asking for your help. We are telling you what we are going to do. The weak have a protector now, and if anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with us. The Council was silent. In thousands of years of galactic history, no one had ever spoken to them like this. Thea published her research on humanity the following week. It spread across the galactic network like wildfire, translated into hundreds of languages, read by billions of beings. Her conclusion became the most quoted piece of scientific writing in galactic history. Humans are not primitives. They are something far more dangerous. A species that chooses compassion despite being built for war. They have every biological advantage for violence, yet they cross the stars not for conquest but to protect strangers. The galaxy has fundamentally misunderstood humanity. They are not to be feared because they are strong. They are to be feared because they are strong and kind. And they have decided that weakness is not a reason to be abandoned but protected. To any empire considering aggression against peaceful worlds, humanity is watching now, and they will come. You have been warned. 6 months later, the Galactic Council formally invited humanity to join as full members. They accepted on one condition. Humanity would serve as protectors for any species that asked. No payment required, no territory demanded. They would simply come as they had come for the Velari, and they would fight for those who could not fight for themselves. The Council agreed. They did not really have a choice. Across the galaxy, the message spread. Species that had lived in fear for generations began to hope. The Krath Empire, once unstoppable, had retreated to its own borders and stayed there. Other aggressive powers began to reconsider their plans. Because now there was someone watching, someone who would answer when you called for help. On Earth, Hana returned to her job at UNSC headquarters in Seoul. She still worked the night shift, monitoring signals from deep space. But now, those signals were different. Instead of routine data and distant echoes, she received messages. Messages from species she had never heard of. Species at the edge of explored space. Species in systems that humans had never visited. Messages that all said the same thing. We have heard about what you did for the Velari. We are in trouble too. Please help us. Hana read each one carefully. She flagged them for review. She passed them up the chain of command. And every time, the answer was the same. Help is on the way. Far away in the Krath Empire, Warlord Vor sat alone in his command chamber. His fleet was rebuilding. His wounds were healing, but something inside him had changed. He stared at a holographic image of Earth, rotating slowly in the darkness. That small blue world, that ordinary yellow star, the home of the creatures that had broken his fleet and shattered his confidence. He had spent his entire life believing that strength was everything, that the strong took what they wanted and the weak existed only to be conquered. It had always been true. It had always worked. But the humans were strong too, stronger than he had expected, and they had chosen to use their strength to protect others. It made no sense. It went against everything he believed. And yet, when he watched the recordings of the battle, when he saw human pilots laughing as they flew toward death, when he saw human marines boarding his ships with nothing but courage and determination, he felt something strange. Not just fear, something else. Respect. He would never admit it to anyone. He would probably never understand it himself. But somewhere deep inside, Warlord Vor knew that the humans had shown him something he had never seen before. A better way to be strong. On Sarath, the great temple was being rebuilt. Elder Rael supervised the work, watching as Velari and human workers labored side by side. The temple would be larger than before, with a new wing dedicated to the alliance between their peoples. In the center of the new wing would be a statue, not of a Velari hero but of a human, Captain Tiho, standing tall, looking toward the stars. And beneath the statue, a plaque with words in both languages. They came when we called, they fought when we could not. They taught us that strength without kindness is nothing, and that courage without compassion is empty. We will never forget. We will never stop being grateful. And we will spend the rest of our history trying to be worthy of their sacrifice. Rael read the words and smiled. The humans had saved his people, but more than that, they had changed them. They had shown the Velari what it meant to be truly strong. And perhaps, in time, the Velari would learn to pass that lesson on to others. That was how change worked. One act of kindness at a time, one choice to help instead of ignore, one moment of courage in the face of impossible odds. The humans had started something on Sarath, something that would spread across the galaxy like ripples in a pond. They had shown the universe that there was another way, a better way. And the universe would never be the same. Far above, in the eternal darkness between stars, human ships continued their journey. They were heading toward new worlds, new challenges, new calls for help. They would answer everyone. Because that was what humans did. That was who they were. And that was why, in the end, they would always win. Not because they were the strongest, not because they were the smartest, not because they had the best weapons or the most advanced technology, but because they cared, because they chose to care. And in a galaxy full of power and fear and self-interest, that made all the difference.